But let's be clear, men's and women's soccer are not the same. It's not just about revenue or fan support. The biological and technical differences are enormous. And these differences are reflected in the quality of play, competitiveness, and yes, the pay gap. Today, we're diving into why these differences exist and why, if women's soccer doesn't adapt, it won't survive as a commercially viable sport. Women's soccer has had a tough journey to mainstream recognition. It wasn't until the 1970s, after the English FA lifted a 50-year ban on women playing on official pitches, that women's soccer started to grow again. Fast forward to the 1990s, and we had the first FIFA Women's World Cup in 1991. But even today, women's soccer is still miles behind men's football in terms of infrastructure, fan base, and financial investment. While women's soccer is gaining traction, it's important to remember that men's football has had over 100 years to develop into a global powerhouse. That lost time has put women's soccer at a disadvantage, and this gap continues to influence everything from investment to fan interest. Now, let's tackle the elephant in the room: biology. No matter how hard we try to level the playing field, the biological differences between men and women have a huge impact on the game. Men, on average, are faster, stronger, and have greater endurance due to higher levels of testosterone, greater muscle mass, and larger heart and lung capacity. This translates to faster sprint times, stronger tackles, and more explosive plays. For example, it's not uncommon for men's teams to consistently cover more ground during a match. A male soccer player might average 9.5 miles per game, while women tend to cover slightly less, usually around 8.5 miles. This is not a matter of skill, it's biology. Men are naturally able to play at a higher physical intensity, and that impacts how exciting the game can be for fans. We've seen cases that directly highlight these differences. In 2017, the U.S. women's national team, one of the most dominant women's teams in the world, lost 5-2 to an under-15 boys team from FC Dallas. That's a group of teenage boys competing against professional women's athletes, and they won comfortably. These kinds of results aren't rare. They happen consistently whenever men and women have competed against each other in sports. This isn't exclusive to soccer. In tennis, former world number 1 Serena Williams, who many consider the greatest female tennis player of all time, openly admitted she couldn't compete with top male players. In fact, in 1998, she and her sister Venus were defeated by a German player ranked 203rd on the men's circuit, who beat both sisters back-to-back. These examples highlight the inherent biological differences that, frankly, can't be ignored in the conversation about pay or competition. Let's talk money. The pay gap between men's and women's soccer is a direct result of market forces. Men's soccer leagues, such as the Premier League or La Liga, generate billions annually through TV rights, sponsorships, and ticket sales. The 2022 FIFA Men's World Cup brought in over $6 billion in revenue, while the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup generated about $131 million. It's simple: men's soccer generates more money because it draws bigger audiences, sells more merchandise, and commands higher TV ratings. This isn't about sexism, it's about supply and demand. Fans tune in to watch men's soccer because the quality of the product is often seen as superior, driven by those biological and technical differences. Women's soccer, by comparison, struggles to draw the same crowds. Major European women's clubs might only fill a fraction of their stadiums for regular season matches, and even though there's growth, it's nowhere near the level of men's leagues. This brings us to a tough conclusion: if women's soccer doesn't change, it won't survive as a profitable sport in the long term. The reality is that the current business model isn't sustainable. TV networks and sponsors aren't going to pour money into a sport that isn't generating a return on investment. Fans won't pay for tickets to games that don't offer the same level of excitement and physical intensity. Some argue that the solution is more investment, but money alone won't solve the problem. The game itself needs to evolve. Whether that's through innovations in how it's played, marketed, or consumed, there has to be a way to increase fan engagement. Women's soccer can't continue to lean on goodwill and social justice rhetoric forever. It needs to stand on its own merits as an entertaining, commercially viable product. Historically, when men and women have competed directly, the results have overwhelmingly favored men. Beyond soccer, we've seen it in other sports too. In athletics, male track and field athletes consistently outpace their female counterparts. Even in non-contact sports like chess, where strength doesn't play a role, men dominate the highest levels of competition. These examples underscore the biological and performance differences that simply can't be bridged. So, when we talk about equal pay, we need to ask a critical question. Are we rewarding performance, or are we paying based on ideals that ignore the realities of competition? Here's the truth: men's and women's soccer are not equal, biologically, technically, or commercially. Until women's soccer can match the revenue and performance levels of the men's game, equal pay is not just unrealistic, it's bad business. Women's soccer must evolve or it risks being left behind. The current model isn't sustainable, and if fans aren't showing up or tuning in, the sport won't generate the money needed to support equal pay. The idea of equal pay may sound fair, but sports are a business, and businesses operate on what sells. Right now, women's soccer is not selling at the same level as men's soccer. Adapt, innovate, and find a way to grow, otherwise, women's soccer will remain a niche sport, far behind its male counterpart, both in terms of quality and profitability. Do you agree? Should women's soccer change to survive, or is equal pay more important? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more sports insights.